What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video we're going to be talking about the training theory that was put out there by David Roche in an article that I came across in Trail Runner magazine. Now the article is titled VO2 Max Output as a High Performance Anti-Aging Super Weapon. And what made this so fascinating to me that I wanted to talk about it to you was the subtitle. And the subtitle states, Training Theory. Output at VO2 max while climbing may have a high predictive value for athlete progression and regression over time, particularly with age. Constant reinforcement of this metric may improve performance at all effort levels, including long ultras, and can seem to reverse the athletic decline process in some cases. Well, you had me at particularly with age, because like many of you, I am not getting any younger, so I'm always looking for ways to kind of beat back the regression that comes with age. Well, really I'm not. But this is a pretty sensational theory, and I did get excited. I got excited enough to actually throw in some extra hill work this week. Now remember, this idea is strictly theoretical. However, what's not theoretical is that hill running is good for us. And the way that this training theory kind of differentiates from the normal thought that hill running is good for us is going to be made clear, and it's going to show why it can help us as we get older maintain our speed. And this article is a little long. It's not that complicated, even though I am struggling to put it into words for you, but I will be linking the article from Trail Runner magazine in the show notes below, so I encourage you to go and check it out. So basically, David and Megan Roche, they are coaches together, and they have found some pretty surprising results from changing up their training programs for some of their athletes. And it's not just for athletes that are getting older, but the idea behind the hill training and how it benefits you and how you can perhaps get faster as you get older comes down to how we can improve our mechanical output of our running by running uphill. And guys, we all know VO2 max doesn't just keep increasing as we get older. In fact, it peaks in our 20s. And there is a big genetic component to VO2 max. So what this article gave me was kind of a pat on the back, reinforcing me that, you know what, Matt, even though you are getting older, and even though your VO2 max might not be as high as some of those elite athletes out there, it's telling me that I can still improve despite these genetic and age restricted limitations. You feel me? So in all seriousness, I'm not comparing myself with elite athletes that have a crazy high VO2 max, but you know what? I do run 5 or 6 days a week. And if there's a way for me to see improvement, and it's as easy as just running uphill a little more often, that's something I can get behind. Now, of course, it's a little more difficult for me because there aren't too many hills in my area, but there are a couple. So over the next couple of weeks, couple of months, you may see me hitting the hills a little more often. Okay, so let's get down to David Roche's theory. And ultimately, it can be distilled into 3 points. VO2 max while climbing measured via a grade adjusted pace. Now, this is key. Obviously, we're not going to run as fast running uphill as we can run running downhill or on a flat. That's why we use the grade adjusted pacing. But running at VO2 max while running uphill may have a higher predictive value for athletic progression and regression over time, particularly with age. Also, the metric is likely a proxy variable for limitations of mechanical output that are faced by some athletes even from the start of their journey, and to be honest, faced by all of us with age. And here's the best part. Constant reinforcement of this metric, so constant reinforcing that running up hills, running hill intervals, may improve performance at all levels, including ultras. And in some cases, it can actually reverse the athletic decline that comes with aging. Can you believe it? So right now, I want to know from you, how often do you do hills? And when you do them, do you actually put in the effort and you run up them like you're doing intervals? Or perhaps you live in a very hilly area and hills are just a daily part of what you do. So you just run a little slower going up and then run fast going down. Let me know. As I said, hills are a pretty special thing in my area. So if I am going to drive to get to a hill, I'm going to put in a bit of work going up it. So David and Megan stumbled across this training theory when they found that some of their athletes over 40 weren't responding to the standard tried and true methods of training. And we're talking about plenty of fast strides and lots of fast but controlled intervals. And what they found is that when they incorporated power hill strides into the training program of some of their athletes, so we're talking about strides that you do on a flat surface but doing those on an uphill. So you are really putting in an effort. Now it's controlled, but it's controlled way up there. They found that some of those athletes actually had breakthroughs in their performance. And we're not talking about the young guns. We're still talking about athletes over 40 at this point. But here's the thing, even though they found it with their older athletes, they also found it with some of their younger athletes. So not everyone responds to training stimulus in the same way. And like some of the older athletes, they found that some of the younger athletes did not respond as predicted to incorporating strides, to incorporating intervals. And yet when they incorporated hill repeats, approaching and getting up to a VO2 max level of effort, those younger athletes that didn't respond to the normal training stimulus saw advances in their training. So here is the reason that you need to include hills into your training, especially if you're looking to improve. Now let's not beat around the bush. Running uphill is not easy. Certainly not as easy as running on flat ground. But when you run up hills, you reduce impact forces. And that reduction of impact forces is going to make the whole running jam that we do a lot easier. It's going to reduce your chance of injury. And if you are an injury-prone athlete, you really have no excuse. You have to get in the hills. You have to put that work in going uphill. But running uphill also increases muscle recruitment and the mechanical demand of your running. So we've all heard the phrase that hill running is speed work in disguise. exercise, and that is ultimately what it comes down to. When we run fast, generally speaking, we run in our most efficient way. We lift our knees higher, our foot kicks back more, we have a higher turnover, and we get all those same benefits from running hills without the impact forces of running fast on flat ground. Now remember, we're measuring our output using a grade adjusted pace, so you don't have to worry about hitting your splits or any particular pace. Because get this, David and Megan Roche found that their athletes, when they were doing hill sprints, when they took that grade adjusted pace, it was often 20 or 30 seconds quicker than what the athletes could hold when running on flat ground. That's incredible. So this is the part you've been waiting for, I think. I feel like I've been talking around in circles a little bit. But the idea of running in hills at a VO2 max effort is that your velocity at VO2 max increases. So if we can run faster at our VO2 max, that means that as our VO2 max decreases, as it will with age, we are still running at a higher velocity. So let's use a very scientific demonstration of my hands being held like this. Let's say your VO2 max is here, and we know that it's fixed. It's very difficult to train your VO2 max. There's a big genetic component. And your velocity of VO2 max is here, and you've been stuck. You're kind of plateaued. Well, by doing hill sprints, you increase your running efficiency. You're training your running mechanics. And by doing that, your velocity at VO2 max increases. So when your velocity increases and your VO2 max drops, your velocity at VO2 max may come down just a little bit, but it's still going to be higher than it was because you've been doing those hill repeats. Gosh, I am glad I am not a teacher. That description just doesn't sit well with me. Okay, ultimately what I'm trying to say is run hills, it's good for you. You will become a more efficient runner, and if you become a more efficient runner, you will be able to run faster than you do without doing those hill repeats. You will be training that top end speed without actually getting to that top end speed. Does that make sense? And if we look at David's anecdotal examples from the athletes that he's training, doing these short hill intervals, these short sprints, VO2 max effort, that translates to every distance that his athletes are training for. And that, I think that is the biggest value, because whether you are training for a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, a marathon, any of the ultra distances out there, you will benefit by running hills. How does that sound? It sounds pretty good to me. So ultimately, by doing these hill repeats, we are training our mechanical output to be higher. Our mechanical output is something we can actually train. It's something we can get better at. Whereas VO2 max, it isn't really worth anything. It declines as we age. We can't really improve it because it's based on genetics. So give it a go. And after you give it a go for a couple of weeks, check back in and let me know how it goes. Oh, and David does say at the bottom of the article that we should mix up the gradients when we're doing our hill repeats, but the sweet spot is an 8% gradient. That's a pretty steep hill. Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury to mix up gradients. The gradient at my local hill, also known as a bridge, is only 5% with a 20-meter gain from top to bottom. So that's where I will be doing the bulk of my hill training. But still, we've got to use what we have. And with that, I had a pretty good week of running. Plantar fasciitis is still a bit dodgy, but I did see a doctor, basically confirmed what I already knew, that I do have plantar fasciitis. Anyway, Monday started off with 10 miles, very easy. You know how I like my easy Monday runs, just super cruisy. And then on Tuesday, well, Tuesday's workout was actually heavily influenced by the article that I read a couple of days before doing this workout. So I did head on down to the Ringling Bridge, and all I wanted to do was run back and forth over the bridge, making the most of those hill intervals. Now Tuesday is my interval day, so I skipped my intervals in order to go downtown and run my intervals on the hills. I felt pretty good. Felt pretty tired, but it felt pretty good, especially because I knew that I'm fighting back the limitations of age, possibly making myself get faster. Who knows? But it doesn't really matter how tired I was after that run, because Wednesday was my day off this week. Felt pretty good to take a day off. After a nice day off on Wednesday, it was time to put the work in again. So on Thursday, I went out and did a tempo run. I started off by warming up for 2 miles, then I did 5 miles at tempo, and then I cooled down for a mile, about 8 miles total. And I gotta tell you, it was very warm that morning. I think when I checked the weather, the feels like temperature was 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 29.5 Celsius. And this is at 4 in the morning, so it was a bit of a toasty run. Friday I went out, 10.3 miles, super easy, just keeping it super chill. And then Saturday was also a pretty chill run, but that was my longest run of the week. I knocked out 15.2 miles. And although I did plan to run those 15 miles solo, I ran over to a park that I was gonna do a couple of loops of, and I ran into a running buddy over there, and I ran with him for about 8 of those miles, and that just helped pass the time. And then I wrapped up the week on Sunday by going downtown Sarasota, meeting up with my local running group, and I knocked out 13.1 miles that day. Now, I don't usually run that far, but I actually put in a lot more of an effort on Sunday than I usually would, because I was testing the Endorphin Pro 3s. When I say testing, I mean I took them out of the box. That was my first run. So I ran with a couple of guys that were substantially faster than me, and they kind of made me pick up the pace a little bit. That's pretty good. I had a pretty good run. It was a nice first test in those shoes. So with that last run, it made my week pretty heavy. Ended up being 67.87 miles, which is about 109 kilometers. And if anyone's wondering, yes, I was feeling my plantar fascia on every step of every run. Some runs were better than others, but for the most part, I am constantly aware of it while I'm running. Anyway, I guess it could always be worse. Alright, don't forget to let me know about your week of running. Remember, successes and setbacks. And do you run hard when you're going up hills? Thanks for staying all the way to the end of the video. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.